This is the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
It's Tuesday, the 11th day of July. Thanks so much for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. Coming up today, haven't checked in with him for a while, John Hayward, our great, brilliant friend. He's the National Security Deputy Editor at Breitbart. We have a lot to talk about. Janet Yellen headed to China. What's the chaos in France exactly? If you've been following that, do you know the particulars, what's behind it? We will get into that. Barack Obama makes another creepy speech about controlling speech. And we'll get into that as well. Also, there's a fascinating, unintentionally hilarious story that has surfaced about you and your exercise habits, particularly you men in the audience. And if you exercise or you're physically fit, you're probably a fascist, perhaps a white supremacist, and on your way to some sort of plan or plot for global domination. This is true. Also, an unintentionally hilarious story about the power grid written by a mainstream journalist whose poor vacation was interrupted while she was vacationing on the Jersey Shore. And, and she's very concerned about our power grid. Now, this is one of those days where that and child sex trafficking is not real. It's a QAnon made-up conspiracy theory. And, the avuncular, aviator glasses-wearing, ice-cream-licking, lady-sniffing old guy we call President of the United States, the Husk. Apparently in private, he likes to scream and yell a lot at people and swear at them. And this, we're told, is cool and means you're in the inner circle. It means he's an exacting guy who wants to get it right. And it's an admirable trait when an octogenarian screams and swears and yells. We're told by Axios. So that and much more we will unpack during today's show. But before we get today's show started, do you have health insurance that's affordable? I don't know if you buy it out of pocket, but if you do, please call John Ruhlman. Give them just a couple seconds of your time, usmedicalplan.com or 877-410-4321. Find out what kind of savings they can make happen for you. Because if you are buying your own health insurance and you did it on your own or you didn't have any kind of escorted help the way John Ruhlman and his team can, you're probably paying way too much, like as much as 30 to 60% more in monthly premiums than you need to be. So if you are a senior citizen on a fixed income in particular, you need to talk to John and find out if there's a better. I know a lot of people think, well, okay, you get me a cheaper rate, that means it's going to be cut rate. I like my insurance because it covers everything, even if I'm paying a little more. That's the mistake you're making. John's not going to leave you with less coverage. In most cases, it's better coverage. I hear from people. They write me and they say, I saved hundreds, I saved thousands. Thank you for introducing me to John. You're just going to look, worst case, you have a 2-minute conversation. You tell them about your insurance and what you're paying in premiums. If you're a small business and you're paying for your own employees' health insurance costs or your own. He says, look, you've got great insurance. I can't beat it. I would be stunned if that's what he says, but if that's what he says after he has shopped and compared 80 different private insurers and you got the best rates and the best coverage available to you, I'd be stunned that John doesn't have a better option for you. But good for you if that's the case, and it's, a peace of mind that you've done the right thing. But my gosh, if you need to save some money right now, John Ruhlman, you buy your own health insurance, John Ruhlman's the first call you ought to make today. 877-410-4321 or usmedicalplan.com. It's rare when we produce this show that we actually can offer you live commentary from the most important thinker and the most dominant leader of our lifetimes, Joe Biden. But when it happens, when news breaks, boy, we want to break right in. So stand at the ready, Fast Eddie. We may need to jip the Husk.
I'm excited, man. Very excited.
As he speaks at NATO. I hope he doesn't yell at us. Have you seen this Axios story that he's... now, of course, it's cool that he yells and loses his temper. This is not a sign of dementia at all. This is cool. In fact, you're in the cool kids club if he screams and yells at you. If you went to visit your 80-year-old relative and he yelled at you and swore at you with regularity, what would you say? And I'm sincere. If you went to visit your 80-year-old relative and he yelled and swore and screamed at you as a normal occurrence, what would you say? What would your assessment be of that individual? Sincere question.
I think they were not well.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but when you get to it, now look, when you're 40, 50, 60, 70 even, and you're screaming and yelling, you're an ill-tempered guy maybe. When you start to get to be an octogenarian and you're screaming and swearing, that's usually a sign of something worse. That's not good. You're unwell. I mean, I would say anytime you're screaming and swearing at any age, you're not a particularly well person, but you can chalk it up to being cantankerous or ill-tempered or ill-mannered or whatever until you get to be an octogenarian. And then I think that's when you have to start saying, well, could that be a sign of dementia? I mean, older, agitated people are generally problematic. You talk to anybody that's ever worked in a nursing home. When you've got an elderly person screaming and swearing and yelling and agitated perpetually, that generally means it's night time. Medication is involved. Isolation is involved. But no, all of the people that are close to the president want you to know this means you're on the inside. This is an exacting, demanding guy who expects and exacts very specific things from them. And if they don't perform to his level, why then you're not in the cool kids club. That's how they spin this. I kept this from yesterday. I didn't get into it, but it really cracked me up. Here's the headline. Old Yeller. Is that not fantastic? Credit to the Axios people for creating maybe the greatest headline in recent history. Old Yeller. An homage, of course, to the old dog that you took out behind the barn and shot. But in this case, an old man who screams a lot. Old Yeller, fantastic. In public, President Biden likes to whisper to make a point, but in private, he's prone to yelling. Behind closed doors, Biden has such a quick trigger temper that some aides try to avoid meeting with him alone. Now, I can imagine if you're a woman, you try to avoid meeting with him alone, but some take a colleague almost as a shield against a solo blast. The president's admonitions include, gee, damn it, how the F don't you know this? Don't effing BS me, only he says the word. Get the F out of here, according to current and former Biden aides who have witnessed and been on the receiving end of such outbursts. Seriously, if an 80-year-old started screaming at you, don't effing BS me, get the F out of here, you would say, Grandpa, I think maybe we ought to go visit some. You'd kindly whisper to him and probably escort him to a nursing facility. The private eruptions paint a more complicated picture of Biden as a manager and president than his carefully cultivated image as a kindly uncle who loves aviator glasses and ice cream. Well, we always knew that was phony. They tried very, very hard. I mean, again, when you break a man down to the sunglasses he wears and the dessert he likes, you know it's a fraud. You know you're not being told the full picture. Some Biden aides think the president would be better off occasionally displaying his temper. You see how Axios even write this fondly. We need more of this. We need to see a fiery, angry. Yes, that's what we need. I agree. I want to see him screaming and pounding his fists more with that fiery red background like he had there in front of Independence Hall. I think that's very effective. I think the country ought to see an 80-year-old man pounding his fists and screaming with rage more regularly. Don't you? I think that would really drive home an effective counter. In fact, why not break that out this morning at the NATO summit? Like Khrushchev, take off your shoe and start pounding it on the podium to make a point. Sure, go for it. That won't look totalitarian at all. Senior and lower. Look, and if this is really who he is in private, this just goes to prove that the entire persona of the Biden riding the rails, avuncular uncle thing from Scranton was always a load of crap. It was, which you knew and I knew instinctively, but you can never really know what people are like behind closed doors. If this is even partially true, then that whole, on top of these people being loathsome, corrupt, coke-addled, stripper-banging hillbillies, on top of all of that, he's not even likable. Like even the ice cream And the whispering nice old guy who sniffs ladies, that's not even real. He's just a screaming, yelling maniac.
I don't want to hear any more of these lies about reckless spending. We're changing people's lives.
Right. That's right. Senior and low-level aides alike can be in Biden's line of fire. No one is safe. Yeah, no one is safe. You see him being led around by King Charles yesterday. Ooh, I'm scared. A stiff wind, they claim, literally knocks him down as he runs up steps. I don't believe anybody in this building is actually afraid of him, but it does sound like Grandpa's agitated again. It's like I say, when you go visit your elderly loved one in a nursing home and you break it down to whether they had a good day or a bad day. Grandpa's having a bad day today. Doing a lot of screaming. Try it again tomorrow. Biden aides still talk about how angry he got at the COVID czar in late 2021 when there was a shortage of testing kits for the Omicron variant. Remember when we used to name them, the variants? That was fun. A spokesperson for the former COVID czar said, I'm not going to speak to what internal conversations may or may not have happened. And the White House declined to comment too, which means that happened. There's no question that Biden's temper is for real. It may not be as volcanic as Bill Clinton's, but it's definitely there. A guy named Chris Whipple has a brand new book. Whipple's book quotes White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, formerly, to say, I said to Biden multiple times, I'll know we have a really good, trusting relationship when you yell at me the first time. Psaki wouldn't have to wait long, said Whipple. Biden tries to conceal his temper in public, but occasionally has shown flashes of it, and some former aides have written about it. Like when he called Peter Doocy from Fox News a stupid son of a bitch. Remember that one? Former Biden campaign and Senate aide, who was chief of staff to another member of Biden's team, wrote about Biden's temper in his 2012 book, writing that Biden was an egomaniacal autocrat determined to manage his staff through fear. I believe this completely. Of course that's who he is. This autobiography told of a time during the 2008 campaign when a 23-year-old fundraising staffer got into a car with Biden. Okay, Senator, time to do some fundraising calls, the aide said. Biden responded by looking at him and snapping, get the F out of the car. Must not have been a woman. That's your option, either being sworn at by him or sniffed. Which, by the way, this also jives with the assertion that he physically assaulted a woman, forced himself on her. Totally jives with that. The Husk is speaking in Lithuania. Let's go ahead and jip it. I'm not sure what he's speaking with the NATO Secretary General right now. He's
your leadership
groping around.
matters.
Oh, he's already walked out of the room.
And we agree on the language that we proposed, that you proposed, relative to the future of Ukraine being able to join NATO. And we're looking for a continued united NATO. They've heard me say, my American president heard me say many times, I still think that President Putin thinks the way he succeeds is to break NATO. Not going to do that, especially with you as leader. So thank you for willing to do it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all.
Mr. President, what is your role in getting Turkey to agree?
Yeah, he runs out the... Oh, that was very important. I'm very, very glad we joined that in progress. Words. Thank you. And then he shuffles out. With the NATO Secretary General escorting him yet again. You notice all these global leaders keep escorting him around, showing him around, again, leading him like a dog or like a confused old man who they don't want to fall and trip. That footage yesterday, that thing has been shared on Instagram. I knew what I was watching when I saw it. I put it up on social media yesterday morning. It's been passed around and passed. That was all anybody talked about yesterday when we saw him doing the presentation of the guard with King Charles. King Charles is only 6 years younger than him, and he may as well have been 20 years younger than him. Pointing to things he shouldn't trip over. He was actually trying to talk to one of those guys that doesn't talk. The Royal Guard, the Palace Guard with the big fuzzy hat. Biden stood there trying to converse with the guy. And King Charles is like, come on now, Mr. So I don't know if the rage that he displays in private is afternoon when he wakes up. Maybe the mornings are what we get, the docile old guy. Biden aides argue the president's rage reflects his high expectations for his staff. Right. Speaking Biden is a particular skill, they said. It can take years to learn to navigate his moodiness and anticipate what information he's going to ask for in a briefing. Some administration officials, many of whom went to elite schools, struggle with Biden's demand to ditch wonky, acronym-filled language and brief him as if they were talking to a close family member who isn't in the D.C. bubble. Biden's defenders acknowledge he can be tough, but they also say he can be generous and compassionate. Sure. See, ultimately, he's hard on you because he loves you. Again, I ask, because it's worth remembering and reminding ourselves, if you got stories, well-documented stories of Trump's, well, in fact, I think we have. Trump, even though I don't know that many people say he flies into rage, but they do say he yells and he gets mad. That's always a big scandal. Whenever we hear that Trump's raised his voice behind closed doors, this is symptomatic of something. A man losing control, a maniac, out of control. But with Biden, it's just his demanding expectations. He wants the best from his people. It's a sign of respect when he's yelling at you, you see. You have it coming. You got to sharpen yourself. Iron sharpens iron, after all. Him screaming and yelling profanities at you means he cares, and he wants the very best from you. When Trump did it, he was a lunatic, teetering on the brink of insanity. All right, you get it. One of the more just bits of news yesterday, apropos of nothing really, that Larry Nassar was stabbed in prison. I guess if the Federal Bureau of Investigations isn't going to deal with him, it's nice that good old-fashioned street justice still exists. They still don't like perverts. They still don't like pedophiles in lockup, do they, Fast Eddie? That's still true, I guess, all these years later.
That's what I've always heard about anything about the prison system. If you are a child rapist or if you've assaulted a child, you will have problems in prison. Yeah, rightfully so.
That's right. You'd better hope if you molest kids, you'd better hope that the prison system doesn't get a hold of you, because they don't play patty cake in there. No. Larry Nassar, the disgraced former sports doctor who was convicted of sexually abusing female gymnasts, stabbed by another inmate in the Florida prison where he's being detained. The attack occurred Sunday in the United States Penitentiary Coleman in Sumterville, Florida. Nassar was stabbed multiple times. Current and longtime employee of the prison and current president of the local union told Fox that Larry Nassar was stabbed twice in the neck, twice in the back, and 6 times in the chest. It was his understanding, this man quoted in the story, that Nassar suffered a collapsed lung and was in stable condition. So the prison system does what the federal government didn't really seem to want to do. On that front, have you, this film that we were talking about yesterday that I've not seen yet, and by the way, I offended some of you, I guess, yesterday, so I will tell you now, that I meant no offense over your there's a lot of people that are very enthusiastic about Sounds of Freedom. There's a lot of very enthusiastic people who have seen the film, and my dismissal of your enthusiasm you took to be a slight or some sort of message that I have no intention of seeing it, or that I don't think the film's message is sincere or real or whatever. I thought I was clear that I intended to see it. I was simply meaning that it's probably not a film that, until I'm in the headspace and ready to go see it, given the subject matter that I cover every day, it's probably not something I will instinctively run out to see. This made some of you mad, and you let me know. And you were really ticked off that I had the audacity to go see a Taylor Swift show with my daughter at the same time. That
Chris,
I said
you're
I
not
didn't
allowed
see
to be a
Sound of
dad. You should have said, you know what? If your daughter asked you to go to Taylor Swift, you should have said, nope. We are going to see Sound of Freedom in prime time on Saturday night. We are not going to see Taylor Swift.
I'm sure she would have understood. No, I got a lot of incoming yesterday that I did not show the proper reverence and respect for Sound of Freedom. So my apologies and all due respect to all of the people involved in the important project called Sound of Freedom, which I will see, and I am certain is excellent. And I apologize for sounding as though I was dismissive of your enthusiasm for the importance of the film and its subject matter. I recognize the severity and the scandal that is human trafficking, child sex trafficking in the United States. I recognize and understand it. So in no way, shape, matter, or form did I mean to demean it or disparage it. To that point, this movie is doing very, very well, and the media is doing a stepped-up presentation of it being a... Have you heard this? It's a QAnon conspiracy film, and they're getting mad that it's doing so well because all it's doing is furthering your wacko conspiracy theories about child sex trafficking out there, Fast Eddie.
Yeah, I've seen, Variety, New York Times,
CNN
Rolling
yesterday.
Stone.
Yep.
Oh, my gosh. They're hitting this movie when it's done more for the box office than any of their woke crap has over the past 2 years.
It's made up. I mean, the media outlets seem to be suggesting that this film and everyone who do you know over the years, I mean, I don't know how many times I've brought this up, and it's kind of awkward to talk about because, one, it's anecdotal, two, there's no way to quantify it, but I know it's real because I see it. There are so many of you who reach out to me and have for years. I see it regularly, and I've told you who I see posted most of all, women, young mothers. Do you know how deeply concerned young mothers are in this audience about child sex trafficking? Like, you may not know. And if you're not on social media or you don't regularly consume it, or you maybe don't interact with that age demographic, maybe you're of a certain age where you're not around 20, 30, 40-year-old moms. I happen to be right now. That's the space in which I live. And I can tell you, I'm always kind of taken aback at how aggressively emotional and angry and responsive and reactive women of that age demographic are to this subject of child sex trafficking. I see it on social media all the time. Like, women who are largely, they don't post political stuff. They'll post, their workout regimen or their favorite food or, hey, I went out shopping or whatever. But then all of a sudden, wham, will be this post about rampant child sex trafficking. And I'm like, whoa, where did that... These are the things that move a lot of, particularly women in this country, particularly women who are mothers. And again, the number of kids that are coming across the southern border right now and then seem to just be going missing, that's also very real. The next time we talk with a border agent or official, I'm going to ask for confirmation of that. Do we have any evidence to suggest, and I think there is, Border Patrol, who tracks these people to the best of their ability, says there are thousands and thousands of kids that cross our southern border and then just poof, vanish. Where do they vanish? Where do they go? It's awful. And it's another reason Joe Biden should be impeached yesterday. But anyway, for those that would say, this isn't real, this is QAnon, this is made up, the Penridge School District, Penridge High School, said their football coach and teacher, good grief, charged in a sex trafficking investigation. He's also been a volunteer high school football coach at Penridge High. Michael Feifel, age 55, of Walnutport. Not a teacher for the school district, according to a message from the district to families and community members. He was arrested as a result of a human trafficking joint investigation in Berks, Northampton, and Lehigh counties in Pennsylvania. Since the district was made aware of Mr. Feifel's arrest and investigation, he was immediately relieved of all volunteer coaching responsibilities and of any contact with children. Back on June 29th, investigators posted several ads on adult websites, even using an undercover officer to pose as a minor. Feifel allegedly contacted the officer and agreed to meet up for sex. Police said he even agreed to pay her. The undercover officer gave Feifel a date, time, and address to meet. And when Feifel arrived, authorities said he was arrested immediately. Investigators found the cell phone he used, as well as the cash he planned to pay the minor with. He admitted then to South Whitehall Township Police that he was the one they were looking for. His employment status is being assessed. So this is just one anecdotal story of a community football coach and substitute teacher who is trying to procure sex with minors. I mean, Chris Hansen, how many years ago, made a special out of it on Dateline? And yet the media still continues to insist this is a made-up QAnon conspiracy. Not happening, not really. And, of course, that then leads a lot of you to ask the question, why are they so interested in pretending this is not real? What is it about these people that keep telling you this is not real, this is made up, this is QAnon? Child sex is not a problem. Child sex trafficking, human sex trafficking, not a real issue. It's made up. Why does the media keep telling you that? Well, there are a lot of you who believe, and I don't think it's probably too far off to suggest that those who are in positions of power at these networks may very well benefit from the system. I mean, there are a lot of people like Bill Gates who had a whole lot of time spent and a whole lot of travel to Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island. That's well documented on flight logs. Can't say that people like Bill Gates were having child sex every time he went, but we do know that his wife ended up divorcing him because he wouldn't end his relationship with a known child sex predator. Now, I don't know about you, but if you're hanging around and you're pals with, professionally or otherwise, with somebody who you learn enjoys sex with children, I feel like that's probably a deal breaker for future conversations and hanging out. At least that would be kind of my operating standard. If I regularly have lunch with a guy and then I find out he likes sex with kids, it's probably where I say, no more lunch. Bill Gates decided, it's fine, we'll keep meeting. To the point that his wife said, stop meeting with the guy that likes sex with kids or we're getting divorced. And he chose to keep meeting the guy who likes sex with kids, allegedly. And so his wife divorced him, or so says the documents.
And Chris, we're at a time where they're passing laws nationwide to make it illegal for you to speak with your child about what their teachers and their coaches and anybody else at school is speaking to them about.
Yeah, and
isn't that scary?
Well, that's right, and they can surgically alter themselves and make themselves a different gender if they'd like, and they can make that decision before they even reach 10. Yeah, you're right. It's horrific, actually. We're turning children into apparently Frankenstein's monster experiments in the lab. We're turning them into objects of sex and trade. And if anybody speaks up about it, it's a QAnon theory that we're making up, our most vulnerable. And that's assuming that the Democrats don't kill them by aborting them before they're even in existence. So, you know, if Democrats don't get their way by killing children, they want to make sure they mutilate them genetically and mutilate their genitals. And if they can't do that, then they want to turn the other way as they allow deviant sexual predators to take advantage of them, I guess. So what we're learning about the American left is child sex isn't happening. Children can change their gender if they want. But I get... You know, ultimately, if they had it their way, they'd just off all the children, so there wouldn't be any children born. I guess is their. In fact, I'm sure I can hear some of them say, "See, Chris, if you care so much about child sex trafficking," in their perverse minds, some of them would say this. That's because there are so many children born in this world unwanted, which is why the importance of abortion. That's the circular sickness of being a leftist. But it all remains the same. Our most vulnerable, the most vulnerable among us, they don't give a damn. They call it a conspiracy if you raise concern. All right, your finances. Yeesh. It's been tough. You've heard me talk with Steve Moore about finances and what he recommends. He said, I can't recommend. But you know who can help? My friend Jason Perrett. Jason is a financial advisor at Eagle Wealth Planning. Now, knowing Jason and knowing his passion for providing financial services to those who are looking to pursue financial independence, Jason focuses on producing consistent results for you every time. He's not reactionary. He's not knee-jerk. In fact, he'll often talk you off a cliff. If you're looking at the numbers every day and the markets every day, Jason's a very steady hand. He is a fiduciary, which means he's dedicated to providing clients with complete wealth management and investment services along with highly personalized professional assistance. Jason can help accomplished entrepreneurs, professionals, retirees, even young people who are just getting started, pursue a life, a long-term lifelong financial independent status. Jason will regularly revisit your goals and assess your risk tolerance and strategies. He can help you anywhere you live, too, by the way. So I don't care what part of the country, what part of the world you're listening to. If you have financial issues or you're trying to figure out exactly where you should put your money, let Jason go to work for you. You can call him today, 816-394-8117. That's 816-394-8117. Jason Peretz, a financial advisor at Eagle Wealth Planning at 1717 Paddock Drive in Kearney, Missouri. You can send Jason an email if you'd like, jason@eaglewealthplanning.com. This is all linked on my website, too. You go to chrisstigall.com, and you'll see the Eagle Wealth Planning logo. Click on that, and all of Jason's information is there. Have a discussion with him about the way forward with your finances. Security and advisory services offered through Cetera Advisors, LLC, member FINRA, SIPC, a broker-dealer and a registered investment advisor. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. For a time, there was talk of drought and wildfires. Well, now we've got the opposite, heavy rain. And, of course, both mean global warming. Whenever there's severe weather of any kind, whether we don't get rain or we get too much rain too fast, everything has to be perfect at all times. Weather has to be it has to be Pleasantville at all times, don't you know? And if it's not perpetually 70 degrees and sunny with an occasional light rain, maybe every couple of weeks. You know that's what it is, right? Like, we have conditioned ourselves, not you and me necessarily, I'm saying collectively, we have conditioned ourselves that if it's not perpetually 78 degrees and sunny, with an occasional rain that we have to have for the crops, it's warming. We're warming. We're ruining the planet. There can never be a tornado. There can never be flooding. There can never be a dry period. It can never get too hot. The only time we don't talk about controlling the weather, that we've done something ourselves wrong, is when it gets excessively cold and starts killing people, and people literally freeze to death in the streets with no heat. That is literally the only time news media will not blame you for something you've done. Isn't that weird? Flooding, you did it. Fires, you did it. Tornadoes, hurricanes, tropical storms, you did it. It's your fault and mine. We can control it. We can stop it. Heat, too hot, we did it. But if it's freezing and people are dropping dead from cold, that's weird. Can you explain that phenomenon? It just occurred to me. Every weather event, every environmental disaster, tragedy is blamed on you and me with one exception, and that is the excessive cold. Why is that? I don't have an answer. I'm asking rhetorically. I wonder if Big Joe Bastardi has some insight into that. Isn't that weird?
It is, Chris, and also to that recent beef, funny beef with Cecily Tynan. It's just like, wow, June was surprisingly cool. Just like, well, yeah. Did she say, well, I guess that we were wrong then. The globe is not warming.
Yeah, no, that then they will snarkily say is, you need to learn the difference between weather and climate.
That's right. I could remember.
Yeah, you need to learn that any fourth grader understands the difference between weather and climate. I see. Only when cool, though. Only when cool or cold. It never applies at any other time. Heavy rain, forest fire, tropical storm, tornado, pick it. That's you. That's global warming. That's something you did, and you need to give up your lifestyle. Oh, by the way, speaking of that, Lynn Hazelton at the Philadelphia Inquirer has one of the most amazing pieces today. I nearly fell out of my chair when I read it. You ready for this? She's just figuring it out there. Headline: The toll of more frequent power outages grows as our lives become more electric. Well, Shazam! I think it's yours truly that's been pointing this inconsistency out for some time, that when you continue to insist that we can't use stoves, we can't use anything that's powered by fossil fuels, we've got to plug everything in, you're putting a demand on a power grid that already can't keep up with our current demand, which means they're going to have to start rationing electricity or we lose it altogether. And in fact, that's exactly what's happened down the shore in Wildwood, they've been without electricity now for like an entire weekend. So I assume Lynette Hazelton, who authored this piece, must have a shore home in Wildwood. Because the only reason she would write about this is if this directly impacts her or someone she knows. They don't write about this unless they're inconvenienced. So a lot of people go to Wildwood, New Jersey, and Wildwood Crest, including some members of the team here. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I love it there. It's fine. It's fun. Huge beach. I always tell people when I went to Normandy, I haven't seen a beach that big since Wildwood. That is an enormous, from boardwalk to shoreline, that is an enormous beach, Wildwood. Anyway, great boardwalk, too.
Was one of my favorite. When I was younger, we didn't go to Wildwood when I was young, so the first time I was there with a family friend, I was like 12. I didn't realize it was like a mile walk to the beach.
It's huge. It's just a huge beach. And, you know, as such, because that's a destination for a lot of families this time of year, they were without power, I guess, all weekend long. They lost a substation or something down there. Well, that really crimps your weekend if you've gone down there to rent a place or, you know, you have a place there and you're looking to get away. Kind of sucks when you have no power. Understandably, the bars, the restaurants, the whole thing, the boardwalk, dark. So naturally, members of the Philadelphia media have been inconvenienced, which means, we should start thinking about this. What is our dependence on electricity? Oh, so people with shore homes have been inconvenienced. Now we're going to start thinking about our electric needs. I see. The privileged whites who own properties down the shore now are thinking about our electrical needs as they've had to spend the weekend without their Apple Watches charging. I mean, let's just be honest. That's what it is, Fast Eddie. That's what has to happen for people like these to write these stories at the Philadelphia Inquirer. Otherwise, they don't care. They don't care that poor families are paying out the nose for their energy needs. They don't care about windmills and solar panels that are going to make energy cost exponentially more for families that can't afford upticks in their power prices, their energy prices. They don't care about that stuff. They only care when the grid starts to flicker during their summer vacation. What the hell's this? Why don't we have power? Well, because we've got a huge demand on an electrical grid that doesn't keep up, and you won't allow us to create new fossil fuel power plants or even nuclear plants that provide us plentiful, cheap energy that we can consume and keep your shore town and all our communities running. You won't do that. You just want solar panels and wind. You keep demanding coal-fired power plants shut down. And so we have this very fragile grid that continues to get weaker and weaker and weaker as you think we're going to run it all on windmills. And so then when we lose it and you go, what the hell? And we say, well, there's a simple solution. Let's build a coal plant. You can't! Global warming! You idiot. You idiot. You're doing it to yourself. And they never think about it until their vacation's interrupted. When a Wildwood electrical substation fire knocked out electricity to 24,000 customers on Friday, it sent the island's tourists and residents searching for desperately needed electricity to power their devices. Oh, no! Oh! Their devices, Fast Eddie. The devices down the shore aren't working. Where can we plug in our iPads? Oh! I can laugh, but to certain people who are actually struggling to pay their bills right now, this is not funny. This is offensive. Sincerely. How offensive is this?
No, Chris, I think of the old woman that passed, I think it was in New York this past winter.
Yep.
Because to heat her home, it cost too much money, so she didn't do it and died.
That's right.
Yeah. And now the people down the shore can't charge their devices.
We increasingly live a lifestyle, writes Lynette Hazelton at the Inquirer. We increasingly live a lifestyle that demands reliable electricity. What? We increasingly live a lifestyle. What? Did she just what? How old is this woman? How old? Seriously, how old is this woman? We increasingly lead a lifestyle dependent on electricity. This is like Thomas Edison's second wife or something? Anyway, all right. According to a report from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, electricity consumption was 14 times greater than electricity use in 1950. What is she writing? Is she really just discovering this? Do I need a study from the Energy Information Administration to confirm this? I think I could have told, like, Fast Eddie, if I walked up to a casual guy on the street and said, hey, do you think our energy consumption is greater now than it was in 1950? Don't you think every person with half a brain cell would be able to answer that question affirmatively? Yes, we use more power now than we did in 1950.
I would hope so. Right? Nothing
sends electric use skyrocketing like a hot summer afternoon when air conditioning is most needed. Why, temperatures in Wildwood were in the mid-80s when the power plant went out over the weekend. Ooh, mid-80s down the shore with no devices. All you have's the Atlantic Ocean to keep cool. Remember how I was early referencing how threatening masculinity and toughness was to these people? Case in point. Mid-80s, no devices at the ocean is very upsetting. This is like
iPad's dead.
Yeah, this is like a third world existence to her. Like, play the Sarah McLachlan music. She thinks, the fly's circling on her head now. This is so... With Atlantic City Electric, utility provider for the island, they've not released the cause of the substation fire. Combination of extreme weather, an aging power grid, and increased electrical demand is making blackouts more common. Extreme weather events alone account for about 7 out of 10 power outages a year. Sure. Increased demand outtaxes aging electric power grids and leads to blackouts, resulting in a long list of things that don't work without electricity. Who is this written for? Who is... Air conditioners, traffic lights, elevators, credit card machines, gas pumps, refrigerators, ATMs, arcades, water parks, medical equipment, hotel key card readers, ice machines. None of those work, she writes, without electricity. From the newspaper of record in Philadelphia, Lynette Hazelton. The typical American endured 7 hours. Endured. Typical American endured 7 hours of power outages in 2021, which cost the U.S. economy $150 billion annually. Low-income communities like Wildwood, where 1 out of 4 residents lives below the poverty line, are particularly hard hit by blackouts. Yes, the impoverished community of Wildwood. That's who she's writing this for. Sure. The poor, year-round residents of Wildwood, New Jersey. 1 out of 4 live below the poverty line, and they're particularly hard hit by blackouts. Workers lose pay as businesses close, and parents have to put out more money to scramble to find alternative sources of daycare when schools and childcare centers shut down. Atlantic City Electric announced last month the completion of 2 major reliability improvement projects designed to make the electric grid more durable and electric service more reliable during extreme weather. Projects like these are further strengthening the local energy grid against the increasing frequency of major storms while contributing to record reliability for our customers over the... Never once in this stupid story does she write that we are taking more and more and more power production, reliable power production, offline in favor of these stupid windmills they're sticking out in the ocean and killing whales and dolphins with, in favor of solar panels made in China, exploiting children and human labor to make, raping and pillaging mines for rare earth minerals to make the batteries that go in these stupid plug-in cars, all of which are drawing more from our electrical grid. She mentions none of that. Coal-fired power, natural gas, plentiful, right under the feet of Pennsylvanians, the Saudi Arabia of natural gas. We have enough coal, natural gas, and certainly nuclear capability. we could power this country without blinking for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. But instead, no, she's not interested in that. She wants to talk about the power grid weakening and lessening. And what are we going to do with all this extreme weather? Knocking the power grid off. How about creating more power? Oh, you can't do that because that'll create more extreme weather. You hear the circular nonsense? We can't make power plants to make a reliable power grid because that supposedly creates extreme weather that knocks the power offline that we all need to keep an economy moving. Does she hear herself? Do they hear themselves? We have to increasingly become more reliant on electricity, but less reliant on sources to fuel and provide the electricity. How do you do that? How do we become more electric while relying less on the resources that provide reliable, inexpensive, constant electricity? Rely on electricity, but don't. It's like saying you need food, but don't eat. Hungry? There's the buffet. Don't touch it. Is what these people do with our energy needs. It's insane. And they use the weather as a justification for doing it. But then it knocks their devices off for their vacation weekend. What the hell? This power grid's out of shape here. What are we going to do about it? I don't have devices. It's mid-80s at the ocean. By the way, there's some poor people I can see a few blocks away that are probably suffering too, but my devices. Idiots. This is offensive to me. They write this like a news story. Our electrical consumption is really increasing since the 50s. Yes, because you demand it. You want us plugging in every damn thing. And by the way, if you'd listen to yourself, so how the hell do you get out of Wildwood if you want to go home and we're all driving a stupid plug-in car you can't plug in? How do you get out of there? How do you go home from your getaway vacation when it's 3 days no power? You can't get home if your car's plugged in, can you? Idiots. Idiots. Short-sighted morons. National suicide. It's a national suicide pact. Can't do anything right this week. I'm only into day 2, and I'm just taking all kinds of incoming. Everything out of my mouth's ticking people off. I don't know what I did. I even got people mad at me at the Harump Society.
Asked me, don't I wish I were debating him? No, I wish we were in high school. I could take him behind the gym. I'm looking forward to this, man. You walk behind me in a debate. Come here, man. They asked me, would I like to debate this gentleman? And I said, no. I said, if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him. Or let's start a real physical revolution if you're talking about it. The idea that I'd be intimidated by Donald Trump, he's the bully used to make fun when I was a kid and stutter, and I'd smack him in the mouth.
Would you really fight the president, sir?
I was talking about high school. Go back and read what I said. How many push-ups you want to do here, pal?
Let's do push-ups together, man. Let's do what's wrong. Let's do whatever you want to do.
Focus on this man, what he's doing, that no president has ever done. No president. Ask the right questions.
Right. By the way, that's machismo. That's toughness. That's what, I told you in the Axios story, they want him to show more of that. They like that Biden. That shows he's exacting, he's tough, he's demanding. Not at all struggling cognitively. However, if you want to be fit and you want to fight and you enjoy things like mixed martial arts or cage fighting or any of that Joe Rogan stuff, or what's that other bald guy that everybody gets excited about that I don't know?
Is he the CEO or whatever?
Yeah.
Dana White?
Yeah. What's his name?
Yeah. Dana White.
Dana White. Yeah, I always see him all the time. Joe Rogan and Dana White. If you like that stuff, then you're a Nazi. Now, again, the octogenarian can scream and swear and challenge you to push-ups and watch me. That's machismo. That's tough, right? But if you work out, not kidding, this is a humdinger. Didn't get to this one, but this actually dates back originally to the 22nd of March, if I have it correctly, and it resurfaced. I didn't see this when it originally went to print, but the original write-up on this thing, it started floating around on social media, and I don't really know why. I don't know if it was reissued. I didn't see it originally, but it's dated March 22nd of last year. So I don't know why it got traction again now.
That's the problem with these like blogs, and the major news sites all have them. They update them, and then it becomes a new story. It's like it's just posted.
I didn't see it when I'm glad it's been updated and reposted because it's hilarious unintentionally. And if I had seen it then, we would have done it. And I would certainly remember having done it. I know we never talked about it before, so I'm glad to have the chance to revisit it a year and some change later. Why the far right is really into home fitness. It's written by somebody called Cynthia Miller Idris. It appears the far right has taken advantage of pandemic at-home fitness trends to expand its decade-plus radicalization of physical mixed martial arts and combat sports spaces. You say this Dana White guy and the Joe Rogan thing, and they're from that whole scene, and when they see Trump walk into these places, he did it again here over the weekend. He keeps going to these MMA fights, and he walks in. Remember when he did the WWE bit a couple of years, 3 years ago, whatever it was? Every time he walks into a wrestling event, in fact, I think there was a period of time where he even participated in it. Right?
Yeah, it was bad, but yeah, I think he jumps on top of Vince McMahon and starts punching him. It wasn't good.
He recognizes the value of the audience. He knows how big it is, and they love him. And if you've seen the footage of it, he walks into these things, and interestingly, he chose to go to the national championship college wrestling event a couple of months ago.
Right.
There are certain scenes where he shows up and he's beloved, and I don't know. I can't imagine everybody at the NCAA National Collegiate Wrestling Championships was excited to see Trump, but certainly most of the people on video were elated that he walked into the arena for that. Similarly, when he goes into these MMA fights, people are it's like a rock star. So anyway, the left saw this some time ago, and they're like, what's going on here? Why is Trump so well received at these events that are so physical? Got to be Nazi something or other, basically. Initially lured with health tips and strategies for positive physical changes, new recruits are later invited to closed chat groups where far-right content is shared. Earlier this month, researchers reported that a network of online fascist fitness chat groups on the encrypted platform Telegram were recruiting and radicalizing young men with neo-Nazi and white supremacist extremist ideologies. Initially lured with health tips and strategies for positive physical change, new recruits are later invited to closed chat groups where far-right content is shared. Physical fitness has always been central to the far right. And they go right to Mein Kampf. Hitler fixated on boxing and jiu-jitsu, believing that they could help him create an army of millions whose aggressive spirit and impeccably trained bodies, combined with fanatical love of the fatherland, would do more for the German nation than any mediocre tactical weapons training. So if you were, well, see, I guess then that you people on the left should be nicer to me because I haven't set foot in a gym in the better part of 15 years. No worries here. I am not a fanatical fascist. I loathe working out. Although, look out, I did buy an Apple Watch, and I'm tracking my steps now. So that, I may be winking. Do you think is that a triggering? Do you think that's triggering that I bought an Apple Watch? Do you think some leftist is going to see that and think I've been recruited?
Yes. Yes, I do. Look at Apple.
Look at him. He's getting more health conscious. That must mean he's on the way. Oh, boy. In more modern times, far-right groups have launched mixed martial arts and boxing gyms in Ukraine, Canada, France, among other places, focused on training far-right nationalists in violent hand-to-hand combat and street fighting techniques. It's caught the intent... This is so unintentionally hilarious. It caught the attention of intelligence authorities, especially in Europe, where various reports have noted the role of combat sports and MMA in radicalizing and promoting far-right violence. Far-right violence.
I figured it out, Chris. I figured it out. Isn't RFK Jr. a health nut?
He is. In fact.
Oh, that's it.
He's constantly showing off. He takes his shirt off and he's doing. By the way, I don't know how old the guy is, but he's kind of got that Putin vibe, who likes to ride around shirtless on the horse. RFK Jr., have you seen him lately? He's showing off his physique. In fact, there's been a bunch of talk about how a lot of these candidates are showing how young and vibrant they are. Vivek Ramaswamy out there playing tennis and lifting. You see, showing your youth and your virility and your strength is really winking at Nazism, fascism. Which means the only way forward is Chris Christie.
All right. Yeah, that's it. Yep.
The only way we can be pure and true and kind as a nation, keeping to our values, is elect Chris Christie. The intersection of extremism and fitness leans into a shared obsession with the male body, training, masculinity, testosterone, strength, and competition. These are, of course, all things the left does, in fact, hate, though, right? It is true. I mean, think of this. It's interesting that it comes, who is this again? Cynthia Miller Idris. So probably a man-hater. I mean, anybody who hyphenates their last name, I've often warned you, 9 times out of 10, they're a man-hater. Be very leery of women who hyphenate their last name. And I say with a rare caveat and exception, those who are paying homage to a lost family member, or if there's an emotional, I'll stipulate there are sometimes familial or emotional reasons someone will hyphenate their last name as a tribute. But generally speaking, 9 times out of 10, any woman who marries and won't take her husband's last name is effectively saying, I'm not going to lose my identity to some man. You're going to remember who I am. I'm not going to give up my last name. I was a person before I met you, you man. I'm not chattel. What are you going to do? Chain me to the kitchen, barefoot and pregnant? Not me. I am woman. Hear me roar. Hyphen. That's 9 times out of 10. So naturally, a hyphenated woman wrote this piece. And they hate men. They hate men. The male body, training, masculinity, testosterone, strength, competition. Those are all awful things. Why do you think they hate the NFL so much? The NFL is a true meritocracy. The left has been after the NFL for the better part of 20 years now, trying to convince you that it's evil. Mixed martial arts, for heaven's sakes, of course. That's even worse. An obsession with the male body, training, masculinity, testosterone, strength, and competition. Masculinity has been attacked at every turn in this country for a couple of generations now. It's long been chronicled. We've talked about it here. The dopey guy in the commercials. Right? Fathers have always been portrayed as dopes, incompetents, stooges. Masculinity itself, testosterone, strength, competition. It's all vulgar. It's unseemly. It's not the best of us. The U.S. is comparatively far behind, they write, which will only become more and more problematic, especially since the phenomenon is growing here. Building on the established fight club culture of MMA far-right extremists. The intersection of extremism and fitness leans into a shared obsession with the male body. Physical fitness training, especially in combat sports, appeals to the far right for many reasons. Fighters are trained to accept significant physical pain, to be warriors, to embrace messaging around solidarity, heroism, brotherhood. Why are these things negative? I mean, what a bizarre thing. Embracing solidarity, heroism, and brotherhood to accept physical pain? This is written about negatively. Recruits are encouraged to link individual moral virtues such as willpower, decisiveness, and courage with desired collective traits such as virility and manliness. And then, of course, they go on to tell you why that also works well with white supremacists. It's why they're undermining our military. Toughness, strength, virility, solidarity, one mission, one purpose, team, unification. Those are all negatives to the left. That's why they're after all of the institutions that require those things. Toughness, strength, resolve. It's really interesting when you get into the psychology of these people. They hate it because they're either threatened by it or they aren't able to keep up with it, intimidates them. Emasculating men culturally has been going on for a while now. And so the resurgence of the popularity of things like MMA and fitness and lifting and masculinity, that's very disconcerting. You can't have strong men in this country. You just can't. If we continue with this trend of strong men gravitating to one another, showing solidarity, working in concert, having national pride and being strong. By the way, this also closely ties to the Second Amendment. Your ability to protect yourself and own a firearm. Speak freely. Your deference to a creator, someone bigger and greater than you who has made us all. These are concepts the left hates because they can't control you that way. If you continue to strengthen yourself, if you continue to defer to a creator, these are things they can't manipulate. These are things they can't control. Your mind is not in the right space for a leftist when you defer to God and you become self-reliant and strong and self-defense. That means you're out of step, don't you see, with collectivist thinking. You won't join the group if you continue your individual pursuits of strength and self-defense and worship. That's really what this is about. MyPillow.com. You know the jingle. There's MyPillow 2.0. It's out now, folks. I just slept on it again last night. You've been hearing for, 20 years, Mike has been making MyPillow. He's been making the commercials, and you wouldn't have thought you could improve upon a pillow, really. But the truth of it is, he's not only improved on the patented adjustable fill, but now he has a brand new fabric and a new temperature-regulating thread to keep you cool. If you sleep hot, and I kind of do, this is the softest, smoothest, coolest pillow, and I mean temperature cool, that you will ever own. And here's the deal. Mike is giving you a buy one, get one free offer with my name, Chris Podcast. When you use that as a promo code, Radio Listener Square, if you go to MyPillow.com and click on that Radio Listener Square, enter Chris Podcast, and you will get one free when you order a MyPillow 2.0. Chris Podcast, by the way, gets you up to 66% off everything on the site at MyPillow.com. Maybe it's the coffee. I am sipping My Coffee it's called, not My Pillow. It's My Coffee. It's delicious. Enjoying it right now. Thank you, Mike. He's got light roast and dark roast versions there, so try his coffee. Listen, support a great patriot, support great American companies like MyPillow and the employees that work there up there in Minnesota. It's a fantastic customer service-oriented company at MyPillow. Every product that you buy from them is a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee if for some reason you don't like it, but they're really high-quality stuff. I mean, the slippers themselves, I sent slippers to a member of the staff. My wife has the MyPillow slippers. I sent pillows. I sent a couple of dog beds. Dean, my dog, is on a MyPillow dog bed, which he loves. Robes and bath towels, whole bath sheets, those great big absorbent bath sheets, if you like those. These Giza Dream sheets we sleep on are like sleeping on a cloud. You will love these products. I just hope you go to MyPillow.com. Use my promo code, ChrisPodcast. Get that buy one, get one on the new MyPillow, or up to 66% off every product. MyPillow.com, promo code ChrisPodcast. John Hayward is our friend at Breitbart, National Security Deputy Editor there. Boy, we could go in any direction. The Husk over at NATO, I was laughing about this yesterday. We talked with Tony Schaefer about it, too. Every thinking person understands, even though they want to pretend that we're propagandists for bringing it up, Russia does not want the Ukraine involved with NATO. They don't want them as member states of NATO, and I understand that our concern is not Russia's concern, but that is Russia's concern. They view Ukraine as theirs, and the last thing they want to see is Ukraine become part of NATO. And a lot of Western Europe certainly understands that and are very threatened by the idea that Russia would be upset with them for it, which is why they don't support the idea. Yet Biden keeps flirting with this notion that they could be. Here's some more cluster bombs. We're just provoking Russia every time we bring this up, are we not?
Right. And if you're of a conspiratorial mindset, and a growing number of people are, then you think that's why they're doing it. They're bringing this up and they're incessantly talking about Ukraine joining NATO exactly because they know it will antagonize the Russians. They know it's a strategic concern of theirs. And if they keep talking about this, the Russians will keep fighting and we'll get nowhere near the negotiating table to work out any kind of a peace deal. The single best way to keep this war rolling is to keep saying you're going to bring NATO into Ukraine into NATO tomorrow and then watch the Russians seethe and fume over it. Meanwhile, we're out of artillery shells. Surprise, everybody. It turns out that, all that money they appropriate went nowhere, and they pay 50 times for a shell what Russia does. So we're out of artillery shells. We don't have any more. So we're going to start giving Ukraine cluster bombs, which are, basically a war crime, because we don't have any artillery for it. I mean, this is crazy to watch the way this is playing out. It's so obvious that there are people that want to make sure this war doesn't get anywhere near ending anytime soon.
And in fact, Tucker Carlson said in an interview with Russell Brand, I'm sure you heard it or read about it anyway, he says that, when talking about Trump, whether you like him or not, whether you want him to be the nominee or not, and I don't know if you agree with this assessment or not, he said he seems to be the only modern-day, mainstream, well-known political figure, period, on either side, Democrat or Republican, that's actually questioning being embroiled in wars and combat. And for that, he appreciates him very much and thinks he might be one of the most consequential, important figures in modern history. Now, I can't say that no one else is questioning Ukraine, but I think Tucker's correct. I don't hear many voices on either side who have a platform like Trump questioning it but him.
No, they don't. And that's why Tucker Carlson is no longer on Fox News, and Fox News is no longer Fox News. They, now they're in the basement scrounging for ratings and coming in behind CNN and all the other horrible things that have happened to them. That's one of the reasons they got rid of Tucker Carlson, because he questions this consensus that you're not supposed to question. And personally, I'm not at all a fan of the Russians. I don't think they should have attacked Ukraine. I think it was horrible. I think everybody over there is kind of a liar, so it can be hard to tell exactly what's going on. And everyone involved in this conflict is corrupt, so it's hard to know who to trust. But at a basic level, the Ukrainians have a right to be Ukraine, and Russia should not have attacked them. And I'm all in favor of fighting back against an invading force. But there have to be limits. There has to be oversight. There has to be accountability. Somebody has to be thinking about the end game here and how it's going to end. Remember, for years, we kept being asked, what was the end game? What was the exit strategy? Remember that? That was everybody's favorite phrase in the media during the George W. Bush presidency. What's the exit strategy for whatever conflict you're in? Well, what's the exit strategy for Ukraine? Has anybody come close to articulating one? And have you heard anyone say, here's what's going to make this stop? I mean, I haven't.
Chris Matthews made his return. I guess he's come out of exile. They fired him, didn't they, for being gropey or pantsless or something? I remember that whole thing.
Yep.
Anyway, he's back now. Apparently he's fine. He's come out of purgatory. He went on with the aforementioned Joe and Mika yesterday and said he hasn't seen this kind of leadership from the United States since FDR and Ike. Take a listen.
We have Joe Biden right now meeting with King Charles III before he gets together with NATO members. David Ignatius earlier talked about how Biden was going to this NATO meeting with NATO not only stronger than it's ever been,
stronger than ever,
possibly the strongest alliance in the history of the world.
History of the world.
And the Biden White House quite confident they can move Erdogan to also admit Sweden in. I mean, guys, do we have that map? Let's show Chris this map. It is extraordinary what Vladimir Putin has done to himself, but also what Joe Biden and NATO has been able to manage. And
Joe Biden and NATO.
Russia that is completely surrounded by NATO allies. And you look at the Balkan Sea.
Say it, honey. Completely. You're right. You got it. Completely. I'm Mika, and I chirped a word in echo. I'm in the conversation, too.
You and Mika put everything on the table this morning, starting at 6 o'clock. I got to tell you, it's all on the table now. Tom Friedman, I guess a couple of months ago, said that Joe Biden has united NATO as never before. His problem is uniting the United States. That is the challenge. I noticed that Richard Haas said the other day in leaving the office, leaving his post at the Council of Foreign Relations, he said that the biggest challenge in the world today is us. It's so interesting how this whole thing is polarized now, that we're doing a great job in world leadership. Great. Really at the level of FDR or Eisenhower.
Okay, I can't. I just can't. I can't. This is like political porn, these people. It's pornography. It sounds like they're literally pleasuring themselves to a fan fiction.
I know, and meanwhile, the reality is Joe Biden in a senior days and the King of England grabbing him and dragging him to the podium because he kept wandering off and staring at the beefeaters. I mean, it's quite a contrast between what Chris Matthews sees in his head and what's really happening in the world today.
He's Ike. He's Ike storming. We've never seen such global leadership and unity globally thanks to Joe Biden. Was there summer? I mean, how in the world do you look at what's going on globally and assess that? You Janet Yellen over there on bended knee to the Chinese, Tony Blinken 2 days before that, bowing, literally bowing. I mean, who thinks we're in the driver's seat? That's sane, John.
The only thing we have going for us right now in a positive sense is that China's economy stumbled in a big way, and it's much, much worse than the Communist Party is willing to admit, which is always true because they're liars. But China's economy stumbled, and it's the only reason that their ascendancy to hegemony and our sinking below the waves has arrested in the slightest. It has nothing whatsoever to do with Joe Biden or anybody in his administration.
What's going on, John, in France? Can you explain that to us? A lot of people have, I know that Islamofascism has become a huge problem in France, and some have suggested that that's what we're watching. I can't speak to it because I haven't paid close attention. I know you do, so can you help me?
You know, it was a police shooting. That was the event that sparked these riots, and it turned into a big Muslim versus everybody else battle because the person who got shot was a Muslim, and the Muslim community got increasingly angry about the circumstances of the shooting, which it sounds familiar to the American ear. The person who did this was trying to get away from the police when they shot him. He had a long record of violent encounters and crimes and so on. So it was another lone wolf type guy that triggered this incident. And you could criticize the police and how they conducted it if you wanted to, but nobody's really doing that. They just erupted in rage, and riots swept across France. And it just escalated to a degree that I think took the French public completely by surprise. They had no idea this was going to get as bad and as big as it got. And as of right now, the French are not winning in the battle for control of their own country. Over here in the United States, they'll tell you that this is happening, and they'll tell you that riots have swept France and cities are burning, but they won't really tell you what the protesters are saying, because a lot of the rioters and demonstrators are targeting churches, targeting Christian clergy, screaming Allahu Akbar and that kind of thing. They won't tell you about the religious dimension to this. They'll just say it's a bunch of youths that are upset about a youth being shot by the police. But there is definitely a kind of invasion sense to this, that this is France waking up and realizing that a hostile population exists in that country that does not respect the French government, culture, way of life. And it has dovetailed with another event that happened recently, which was in Sweden. In Sweden, a guy burned a Koran, and the Muslim world went nuts over this, and they're furious at Sweden for permitting it. They're demanding international laws that forbid disrespecting Islam. Forget your free speech. We need international laws that trump that. Free speech has to go. And that has folded into this and made the protests even more angry and even more enduring.
Which domestically, you and I have spoken. It's interesting because the left is getting, in fact, Jen Psaki said last week, I think, that Muslims here in the United States are being co-opted by Republicans. No kidding. She said Muslims are being co-opted by Republicans. The Southern strategy of Nixon. It's the same thing. They're tricking Muslims into thinking our public school system is indoctrinating kids with the LGBTQ agenda, and Muslims are falling for it. And they're being roped into Republican propaganda by complaining at school board meetings. No kidding.
Well, yeah, and it's not surprising because the left thinks everything is transactional. When they look at a group like Muslims, they see a political organism that they thought they had a good relation with, and they had done things for Muslims and helped them out, and Barack Obama spoke up for them during the war on terror, and they thought that meant Muslims are in their hip pockets forever. And they have a deal. The left has got a deal shaping up with Islam that's going to say, we'll give you that law you want that prevents disrespecting the Quran and insulting Muhammad. We're good with that. We'll give you that. But then we, the left, have 25,000 different things we want people to not be allowed to say. So that's going to be the entree for us to impose our speech codes alongside yours. And we'll have a new version of free speech that's been politically shaped by powerful groups to please them. And they thought that deal was great. And the Muslims are all on board. But then along comes the LGBTQ and trans indoctrination in schools. And Muslim parents are showing up at meetings and saying, we're not in favor of this. We don't want this being done to our kids. And the left is gobsmacked. They had no idea the Muslims actually meant that stuff, that their culture really does frown on people manipulating their children or indoctrinating them, and that they would stand up and object to this. And so far, the left has not been able to get them to shut up. They've threatened them. They've bullied them. They've made offers to them politically, and nothing is working. And they're just beside themselves. They didn't think anybody was really serious about their religion anymore.
So Orthodox Muslims are becoming a problem for the left is the theme I'm hearing here.
Oh, absolutely. And they're not folding the way that a lot of Christians have. The left has this experience with Christianity over the last 30 years, and they were able to subjugate it. They made it look uncool and unhip. Churches bent the knee. They started changing their ways. They started giving the left what it wanted and agreeing not to criticize it. And really, that started with abortion. You go all the way back to Roe versus Wade and how so many religions that say abortion is morally wrong decided, we're not going to excommunicate Democrat politicians for supporting abortion. We're going to make our peace with this. And they thought Muslims would do the same thing. How could this be any different? We're just going to ask you, just as we told the Christians that they're going to have to change their religion a bit, to conform to our ideology. We're going to make that deal with you, Muslims. And the Muslims said, nope. And the left said, wait, what? You're not supposed to be angry at us.
You brought him up, so why not? Continuing with the theme of monitoring our speech, and outright controlling our speech. It's we're actually putting together a montage here just to continue to demonstrate and underscore how serious these people are and how committed they are to controlling speech that they don't like. Barack Obama, again, visiting Stanford and their Cyber Policy Center, had this to say.
While content moderation can limit the distribution of clearly dangerous content, it doesn't go far enough. Users who want to spread disinformation have become experts at pushing right up to the line of what at least published company policies allow. And at those margins, social media platforms tend not to want to do anything. Not just because they don't want to be accused of censorship, but because they still have a financial incentive to keep as many users engaged as possible. Now, some companies have been taking the next step in managing toxic content, experimenting with new product designs that, to use just one example, add friction to slow the spread of potentially harmful content. And that kind of innovation is a step in the right direction. It should be applauded.
Please clap.
But I also think decisions like this shouldn't be left solely to private interests. These decisions affect all of us. And just like every other industry that has a big impact in our society, that means these big platforms need to be subject to some level of public oversight and regulation.
And there's the rub, isn't it, John Hayward? He sees our speech as a utility company the government ought to step in and manage.
Yeah, his applause line fell flat there, like you were just needling him for that nobody applauded when he thought they would. But if he'd been giving that speech in Beijing, the whole Communist Party would be on its feet roaring and applauding, and Xi Jinping would be pumping his hand and, waving little Barack #1 signs. This is exactly what China's version of free speech is. It can't be left to private individuals. You can't decide for yourself. We need an all-wise, all-knowing government agency run by the permanent party in power, the one party that has power, and they get to decide what's truth and suppress everything else. To this day, China will tell you that gigantic censorship apparatus they have, which will nuke your account if you post a picture of Winnie the Pooh, was created entirely to protect its people from disinformation. To this day, they'll tell you that's all they're doing, and they wonder why we don't get with the program and do the same thing they do, and Barack Obama wants to do the same thing they do. He's a totalitarian to the core. That's the essence of who he is, who he always was, and this is his vision for the future, a ministry of truth run by the Democratic Party, which is the permanent party in power in the government, and it will define all disagreement with it as disinformation. The New York Post getting suppressed for running the Hunter Biden laptop story, which was absolutely true, that is Barack Obama's future. That's what the vision dancing in his head, and that's the triumph of government censorship, was suppressing that story that hurt his party, and that's all he wants.
Yeah, just give me a little Jake Tapper, just the quick Jake Tapper as demonstrated by people like Jake Tapper, what they decide and what they want government to decide. Take a listen.
We do have now some of the sound, as I told you. We're not, and the audience, we're not carrying his remarks live because, frankly, he says a lot of things that are not true and sometimes potentially dangerous.
See, that would garner applause from Barack Obama.
Right, absolutely. Potentially dangerous. That's the key word. The people that do this will decide that certain facts, which are true, are things you don't need to know.
Toxic content.
Potentially dangerous. Yeah, toxic content, stuff that you're not equipped to understand. It won't be a binary decision. It won't be demonstrably true, demonstrably false. It will be things they think are dangerous that you don't know or don't have the context to understand. So you have to be protected from that. That's what this always turns into. And before you know it, you've got party commissars just scribbling out lists of things you're not allowed to say on the internet, just like they do it in China.
Is there anything more important than this subject? Seriously, is there any? I don't think there's a single bigger issue than this one. I hope everybody understands it, John.
I think there are three dominating issues. Protecting children from indoctrination and sexual exploitation is obviously a huge one. This, freedom of speech, freedom of the internet, and elections. Election reform, sound elections, getting rid of all the cheating and little quasi-legal things they do in the margins to confuse our elections. We need sound, solid, fair elections by a public that's allowed to have access to information and to discuss political ideas with each other. And it all has to be in the service of protecting our children.
Brilliant analysis as always. It's why we love having John Hayward, our national security deputy editor at Breitbart. He's on Twitter. Follow him. Read everything he tweets because it's always good. It's never not smart. All the time. Never once do you read anything from John and go, oh, I wasted my time. Never. At @Doc_0. At @Doc_0. John, thanks for your time, my friend.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.